This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, wait, I can't hear everybody. Hold tight just a minute.
Everybody sit here and just move your mouse so he'll think we're talking and he can't hear us. Chris ain't even smiling. He's just sitting there all serious. He's just like, whoa. There we go.
Now I can hear. Okay. And so let me start over. Technical difficulty. I apologize. How is everyone?
Alive.
Awesome.
George is
that's
a
good.
mute.
So, um, so I'm Brian, and Chris is also with us. Hello, Chris. He's with Thunder
What's
Laser
up?
also. And a few of the usuals. Looks like we might have maybe a newcomer. And anybody that is new to this, we'll get off on a tangent. So if you have any questions, interrupt us, raise your hand, uh, whatever, and just pop right in, and we'll be glad to field any questions or comments that you have. So anyway,
The guy in the
to
big
the
orange shirt's the troublemaker, by the way, just let everybody know.
yeah, well, and maybe
I'm the innocent one.
Hey, I
is that
think I've been good lately.
I'm always good, so I don't have to worry about it. I don't even need to think about that, do I, Chris? I like your cup. I have a bunch of those. Not
It's
with frozen
frozen.
on it, if that's what that is, but other similar cups.
I'll be
around
back.
Yeah,
there.
it's my daughter's cup.
So, all right. Well, does anybody have any questions or comments? Anybody want to give any introductions of who they are or anything like that? If not, we can just have a couple awkward silence moments and then maybe rock it into something awesome. So,
Is
I'm
Rich a
as
new user, new
I,
customer, or new
I
attendee?
I think
I
possibly,
was,
yeah.
yeah, I was here the last call.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. But
So,
I have a 51-130 that just came in, last week, and it's
mhm.
uncrated, checked for damage and everything, and I'm just trying to get my office finished. We've got sheetrock and electrical and all that done. We're to the point where we're taping and puttying. So I'm hoping to have it all done and have the system in by next weekend.
Nice.
Anybody else deep in show prep since it's that time of year?
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, y'all run your lasers? Oh, okay.
I know, right?
Uh-oh, Brian, he looks like he just got booted. His cable internet's down, so he's using his cell phone. So he's having some technical issues. But I guess, yeah, most everybody's probably running pretty full right now. Seems like it. There he is.
that was strange. Sorry. The recording stopped and started when I went out and went back in, so this one's probably going to be messed up. So,
Grant's
sorry.
gonna get on you for it.
Yeah.
Haircut.
So
All right.
if I
So,
kick out again, sorry. If I kick out again, I'll stay out until I can get a reliable connection, so I don't keep having that happen. So I don't keep
oh,
interrupting you guys. Maybe it'll stabilize. So what were you gonna say?
how convenient. Now, George has posted some questions earlier. Quite a long list that we could discuss. Basically, says, I know cast preferred over extruded. Can we discuss why and the difference? In reference to acrylic. So if anybody's got comments on that, cast versus extruded acrylic.
Yeah. Um.
It's not because of cost, right?
What's that?
It's not due to cost, right? cast is definitely preferred and more expensive, right?
Right. Yeah, and I've got a little bit in the article on it, about
Yeah, I think we just dropped again. Did it freeze up for everybody or just me? I see Danny moving. I see Julia moving. Everybody wave. Okay. So I guess he had some information in the article about that cast versus extruded. Yeah, there's Tommy Lowe's back. I think everybody will cut and engrave cast, and then I think you can cut the extruded. It just doesn't.
Hey, Chris, I don't know if you can tell that your mic is muted.
How did I get muted? All right. So cat, thank you for that. Cast versus extruded. I don't know if it missed the part about, most people will cut and engrave extruded, but cast is typically, or yeah, cut and engrave cast, but then extruded, you don't typically engrave. I think I got that right. I think it cuts fine. It's just not the engraving, the contrast. And then kerf setting affecting acrylic. Well, kerf is going to affect everything you cut. Kerf is basically the portion of material you're going to give away to the cutting. Um, it's very small, but if you need dimensionally correct things, then you've got to account for it, whether it's wood, acrylic, cardboard, whatever you're cutting. We got an article about understanding kerf and that kind of thing. And kerf can change with, your power level, your wind selection, your focus. So if you're doing some of those slip fit boxes and things like that, where dimensions matter, that's where it matters. A lot of times people make things out of acrylic that they're assembling, so it does affect it as well. What do I need to know when cutting an eighth of an inch and a quarter inch? For the most part, I was listening to the other question about the edges always be smooth. Um, when you're cutting either one of them, the wide opening nozzle, low air pressure, slow speed, high power, that's what gets you that smooth edge. But that's also what gets you fires too. So you got to watch out for dust accumulation. You're running low air and high heat. So you really got to watch when you're doing the acrylic. It turns out real pretty, but it's definitely like when we see fires, acrylic is a contributor. Will the edges always be smooth? No. Even on, I guess either acrylic, if you don't run the air right, or you've got mechanical issues like bearings or belts, you could definitely get some chatter and non-smooth edges due to like frosting. So if you think about it, the air coming out of the nozzle, if you've got the wider or the narrow opening nozzle and high air pressure going, it's going to affect the top part of the acrylic more than the bottom part of the acrylic cut, and you get that frosted edge look. So that's why everybody runs that low air pressure, and you're not reintroducing some of that stuff that you're lasering back into the edge as well, because that plastic has almost like a molten state too, where I guess things can adhere to it. And it says when trying to fit the pieces inside of each other, what other hiccups could potentially arise? Well, just your curve. If you change material thicknesses, you may have to adjust your graphics. How you cut them based off the thickness of your material. The eighth inch and quarter inch may not work on the same cut file just because the curve changes. And Lightburn's got that offset tool. You can manually offset it, or you can use the offset setting in the layer to adjust that to accommodate the curve setting. The way I measure curve is, you cut out a decent sized square, you get a pair of calipers, you measure the pocket, you measure the resulting cut square, and divide the difference, and there's basically your curve setting or curve width, and then you offset half of that because of the beams only cutting out half from your material piece that you're keeping, so you offset half that distance away. And then it says you made a few things if you want to show and tell. Yeah, let's do some show and tell. Holy cow. Is that a clock? Nice. Is that a bourbon barrel or whiskey barrel? Where are the hands? We need some Charlie Chaplin music, or is that the old? There you go. Anybody else got
How
show and
wet? How wet was that barrel, George? The moisture in that barrel lid, was it really wet, or has it been drying for a while?
So when I got it, my voice is a little shot, sorry. When I got it, it was warped. So I had a pretty big bow in it. I soaked it in hot water for probably 4 hours, maybe 5. And then I put it flat on the ground. I put about 400 pounds of pavers on it. I let it dry for 2 days. Then I brought it into the shop. I put it up against some 2x4s, clamped them down to make sure the bow stayed out of it. I let it dry for another 5 days. Then once I thought it was dry, I took it out and I let it sit for about 4 or 5 more days to see if the bow would come back. It's gone.
Does it reek of bourbon?
When I first got it, yeah.
Okay, the smell will slowly dissipate. I work with lids all day long. I'd be very mindful, especially if you put those joints together and either glue it or put something on the back of it. As it dries, it may take 6 months. It's going to curl again.
Hmm.
So just keep that in mind. I wind up putting mine in a solar kiln.
So I was thinking about building a frame for the back of it, screwing it through to try and help keep it pulled tight to the frame.
It's still going to move.
Really?
It's still going to expand and contract and want to move. I just want to give you the warning. I hate to see somebody go through all of that work. I despise barrel lids, but I work with them every day. Jim's laughing because I think he's heard me complain about them before. So just be mindful about that when they go to expand and contract. But I wind up kiln drying mine so I can glue them together.
So mine, I already get them pre-glued, so they've fully been used. And this one,
If they've never been glued.
you can see on the back where they charred it. And then
That's normal.
Yeah, and then I routed out the hole in the back for the clock parts.
Like I said, just be mindful. I get a lot of complaints 6 months down the road. Hey, it's warping, and that's the natural.
Well, it's just anywhere because we're in Kentucky. For everybody else that doesn't know, that's a common thing to see around here. Is everybody doing the barrel lids one way or another, whether it's engraved or not? And everybody has their way of doing them, but they all tend to curl up some, it seems like.
Now I do have another lined up from a guy who gets me brand new lids, never used.
Stick with those. They won't warp and twist as bad.
That was what I got from one of the forums that I'm on.
Yeah, I feel bad for the price that you're probably paying for them.
And I might reach out to you. The wife and I are looking at property around the Lexington area.
We're what, 2 hours?
Yeah, we're 2 hours southwest of Lexington. So if you look on the map and find Elizabethtown, we're about 12 minutes from Elizabethtown.
Whatever we can do, George, all you got to do is holler.
Normally I can, but I can't right now.
You must have been a Tennessee fan after last week. Y'all probably don't care about Kentucky football. That's right.
No.
So, hey,
Yeah.
Chris, were you on when we were talking months ago about cutting 3 mil ebony with
I
the
may have
laser.
been, but man, it's been a lot of nights between now and then.
Hey, who are you telling? So Brian's suggestion was use a 1.5-inch lens
Okay.
to cut it because it multiplies the power.
Yeah, you're concentrating the energy into a smaller location. So, you take
So it
wattage
doesn't
and
work.
didn't work.
Nope.
Well, so what's the
Three,
story behind the ebony wood?
it's
The
the
dents?
oils and the grain.
Ah, okay.
So just because I can, so we did that on the 3580. But again, because I can, I'm probably gonna throw it in the 130 tomorrow just to see what happens.
So what did it take? Like, were you able to get any kind of success, or was it just an absolute?
Was it 3 passes?
Three passes. We finally got it to cut through. But then
What speed and power?
because I was, huh?
What speed and power?
God, it was what, 30?
I had like 20 speed and like 50
Oh,
power. And
and how
I'm
thick?
I'm
3 mil?
literally
Yeah,
or
less.
less. It's over.
There's the problem.
And I'm just cutting tiny little pieces. I'm cutting earrings. So I actually had some failures because I had to, all my earring stuff, I'm lifting up off the bed a little bit. Well, then the air blows it around once it drops and whatever. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if I cut one and don't move it out of the way before it starts cutting the next one, sometimes it nicks it. So I was just like, I'm done. I quit. I don't care right now.
Would they be strong enough to survive the fall from the knife bed down to the crumb tray? Were they 218?
No, yeah, it totally would just because it's ebony. And I'm not cutting like anything crazy with it. Yeah, it would. I don't think I've
Okay.
ever taken the honeycomb out of the 35. Not that I don't
It's
know
an
how, I
option.
just haven't.
Have you tried to reduce your speed substantially and increase your power more?
Yeah, so this
'Cause-
has been a problem since we had our other brand machine before we ever got Thunders. And I was going abysmally slow. I think like 4 speed or something when I had the other machine. So yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous, that wood. It's so dense.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what I'm
to
saying is
Jason's
if you
point,
drop your speed down, because 20's pretty fast, and you're only using 50%, you're only using 40 watts of your tube. So I mean, if you went up to, I mean, because I'll cut 3/4 inch with a 130, like the 15 ply, real heavy duty plywood at 95 at 5 millimeters a second, and it cuts through in one pass. But if you're going 20 and you're only at 50, I mean, the speed is high. I would say pretty high, and then you still got another 50% of your tube you can use. Because I mean, I don't think if you're at 3 mil with ebony, I mean, you should
It's
with the 80 watt.
less than just grab the calipers.
2.47.
wow.
That's what I'm saying though. Is that thickness? I mean, you should be able to cut through that in one pass with an 80 watt. Just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to crank the power up because you got the power.
Oh yeah.
But
I want to throw it in the 130. I cut this in 2 passes on the 130. So
yeah.
Some of this actually was just in one. It just kind of finished cutting it the rest of the way out in the second pass. So
but
yeah,
I guess
I'll keep playing with it.
My point is don't be afraid to use the power of the tube, and then adjust your speed to get the best results. Don't try to adjust your speed to a lower power to get your results. You want to take full advantage of the tube's power.
If I remember right too, though, with ebony, does it, and Tommy can probably concur to this one, doesn't ebony even dull saw blades really fast in chisels? Doesn't it usually pretty much obliterate both of them too on if you're cutting it out a lot, if I remember right, because that's been a while since I dealt with ebony.
Even sanding to make the green and green
the bellows.
screw covers. to do the pillowing, it's miserable.
Yeah,
And
it's a nasty wood to deal with. It's gorgeous, but it's nasty to deal with.
Yeah. And when I cut it, I need to remember tomorrow if I'm going to experiment with the 130 to bring my sunglasses out, because every one of those passes, it reflects the light back so brightly. It is very painful.
Now, Chris,
With the lid closed.
would this be an issue too? Is it the darkness of the wood itself? Would that be absorbing some of the power to the
Well,
point of not?
Generally, your material will absorb the different wavelengths differently. We've seen like different color, like tumbler cups and stuff react differently, but that could just be their, however they created that coating and that coloring. But it's possible, right? I mean, like visible light is harder to see on a dark object versus a light object. So maybe the same principle on that invisible beam.
Black absorbs a lot of different lights from every other color. I mean,
Yeah.
Black can be a lot harder to work with, but ebony itself is just a pain in the. It's gorgeous wood, but it's a pain in the butt. I mean, you go through doing a bunch of pillows, and you can go through 3 sets of chisels, just because you're knocking down a good edge that normally would not be knocked down.
One thing you may try is still slowing down so that you can finish in one pass, because that does give a channel for the debris to go underneath the cut line versus doing 3 passes where you don't finally punch through until the last round. So dropping the speed to a 5 and
and doing the multiple passes, you end up with a nice curve on it. It's a little soft edge.
Where are you focused at? How far out you focused?
We were focused half
at that.
Then when you do your second cut
in the middle.
Then when you do your second cut, are you focusing in even further? You refocusing?
No. Because it's literally less than 2.5 millimeters thick.
Yeah, I don't know if
that's right. I keep thinking the
focus techniques would do a whole lot, but when you say 1.5 lens, you're talking about the American Photonics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the stock focal distance? Because I always thought they talked about it being like a battery.
It's 10
millimeter. Mm-hmm. So I literally had it focused at at what, 5?
Yeah, so you actually
I changed the focus.
We started at 10, and then went down. I forgot we tried it with both lenses.
You're actually kind of hurting yourself there because your sweet spot is at 10, and that's going to be the narrowest. So I would focus between 7 to 13, no further than the thickness of your material, probably really half the thickness of your material, up or down. Maybe 7.5 to 11.5.
Focusing into it, I mean, like I get the concept behind it, but if you have the power to drive that beam, the focusing into it, a lot of times is going to leave. I mean, if it's desired, that bevel like you're talking about on the edge, because you're focused so far into it, part of the curve of the beam that's angled at that point leaves that edge. But I mean, I don't understand. I mean, everybody's talking about it, like focusing into it, and I don't.
Well,
understand. I've been doing this. I've been doing this a long time, and I've never had to do that. Never.
Well,
so
it just helps if you're looking for a consistent edge with less material. You actually have to laser away, putting that focal point in the middle, and it's more critical on thicker things. But if you're defocusing, changing the focus on that, you're making the curve wider, which means you have to burn more material to create what you're calling your cut. And it's also giving you that edge you're probably looking for, but that is also adding to the difficulty of cutting.
But I mean, that's what the purpose of the lenses are for, because each lens has a different focal distance. Like the beam concentration on a 2-inch lens is about 1/2 inch to 5/8 long, and a 4-inch is about 3/4 to 7/8 inches long. So I mean, that's kind of the whole point of changing your lenses, is to get that straighter beam for a longer distance, to get a longer, straighter cut.
For thicker materials, yes.
Even for
that's
thinner
where
materials, if you use the 4-inch on
yeah,
1/4 inch or 3 millimeter, you're going to get a straight line no matter what, and you don't
yeah.
have to focus in or defocus or any of that stuff. So I can't wrap my head around it because it's never really benefited me, but I don't know. That's just kind of my take on it.
I mean, when I throw the 4-inch
It's
in
kind of
there, my goal is to get as close as I can so that I'm halfway through the material, and that brings my air assist closer too.
Yeah, but
So
then it
that
leaves a bigger opening. So if you're looking for a nice crisp edge at the top, you're not going to get it because your beam is flared at the point of entry to the wood, so it's going to leave that flare bevel on the edge of the wood. I mean, you might get a straighter cut slightly into it, but then you're going to compromise with a burnt edge or a smoked edge because of the beam. I
yeah, I
mean, it's
mean
like to
it's
me, it's like defocusing on a rotary. I mean, there's absolutely no point in it if you got your line interval correct and your focus set and the steps and everything set up. It should engrave fine. I mean, I get it. You defocus to get a wider band to get more to kind of speed up your time, but then you're compromising something to gain that. You're
yeah,
not
you're
gonna
losing
you're not gonna
fidelity.
get that. Yeah, you're not gonna gain. You're gonna lose something. Something of what you're doing, you're gonna lose by compromising like that. And that's all I'm
Yep.
saying with the focusing into it is, I mean, you're gonna lose something of the quality or something to be able to do it that way. So I mean, it's
Yeah, and I'd say for the thinner material, you can get away with a shorter focal length lens to try to narrow up your beam spot so that you're actually burning less material, right? So 3 millimeters is very, very thin. You know, we should be able to go down, and there's been discussion about using the HR head for cutting like really thin materials, 1/16 of an inch, if you're trying to minimize the dust. Like one customer was doing, I think it was Delrin, which creates that big white powdery mess. And so in order to reduce that, because they're also using a like a BOFA filter system that, $1,500 4 times a year filter changes or something. So they want to see if they could produce less dust. So the idea was, hey, maybe you try a finer beam spot that can actually laser through your material without, expanding much, so that you get a thinner kerf line and thus, less dust. Whereas the 4-inch, of course, will cut through that thin material like butter. It's just that it's going to have like a wider kerf line, even without focusing into the material. All those tips and tricks.
I found that I've cut a 1/2 inch a watt on a 24 to 60 watt, and I found that the combination of a really slow speed, a really high power on my tube, and really super hot air, and then taking that distance halfway, I'm getting like perfect cuts on 1/2 inch, just on the standard US head, like every time.
Yep.
I think it's
Yep.
the combination of all the things together.
Yep. That's why, like, the stock air pump will get you through, but it's like souping up your car. You can do external air, and if you can run, up to 55 psi, if your compressor is capable of keeping up, that is just going to help that much more for cutting. So another techniques like focusing into the material can help you cut faster, less dust. And then the 4-inch lens, of course, is an option too. And I've seen some rumblings of like maybe even a 5-inch lens out there, but that can't be that popular because not a lot of stuff about them. But that would help cutting too. Good discussion.
yeah. The 4-inch lens would be more beneficial on a higher wattage machine, obviously, because you have more power to push that beam, so you get less degradation at the actual focal beam or at the focal lens, so you can get essentially more concentration. But it's like you said, using the kerf is going to obviously change by the lens.
And can
And
be
if you're
by
not
your
working,
power output too.
well, yeah, but I'm just saying if you're running a 60 watt and you put a 4-inch lens on a 60 watt, eh, you're probably not going to gain much out of it because you're gonna have so much more degradation than you have power to compensate for that loss. Whereas on a 130 watt on a 4-inch lens, you might lose 15% instead of 10% or whatever, just or arbitrary numbers. But on a 60 watt, you might lose 30% instead of 10% because you don't have the power to back up the focus of that beam to still produce the same amount of power or relatively the same amount of power or density.
Of the 4-inch lens for a 60 watt. Is there anything that it is good for on that size of the tube?
I couldn't hear that. What was that?
The 4-inch lens with a 60 watt. Is there any good application?
Yeah, I mean, my
I'm not
recommendation.
saying it's bad. I'm just saying that
Like,
the more power you have, the more you'll get out of that, I guess. It's like doing photos with a 60 watt versus a 100 or 130 watt. You know, the density is a lot higher on the 60 watt. One, because it has less on the smaller machines too, because it has less distance to travel, so you lose less of it. And plus, you can actually use a smaller lens to get a higher concentration at the surface. Whereas a bigger lens or a bigger laser, you're going to have more. I don't know the technical term, sorry, but you lose the I don't know. Where am I going with this, Chris?
I mean, so the main thing is your beam spot size can be dictated by your power output, but then your tube can also have like a minimum output value, right? So you can dial down to 60 watts. So for photo engraves and sensitive materials is a little bit easier than your larger 130 watt. You can make up a lot of that with speed and other things. But from a cutting standpoint, with that 4-inch lens, I use it even on my 80 watt if I'm doing a half inch and beyond. And I utilize the technique of focusing to the surface, a couple millimeters away and cut that way. I can get away with it on my 2-inch, but it takes me a little more effort to cut with a 2-inch lens, that same material, than it does with the 4-inch. So because I'm just having to burn away, more material because of the curve shape, the two triangles, as the beam gets in and out of focus, because you're starting in the middle of that point. But every application is going to be a little different. Just keep in mind as you crank up the power, you can also crank up your beam spot size. Your curve will change, and as that curve size gets bigger, that means you're burning away more material. Instead of cutting, 0.05, now you're cutting 0.055. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but that's still more material you've got to ablate or laser away. So. Yeah.
And Jason, we understand we're going to play with it more. It's been a fun experiment, to be honest with you. Considering what Gaboon Ebony is what we're using, and its hardness is 3080 versus like American Cherry, which is a whole lot less. I think Red Oak is 1290. Hard Maple's 1450. So, I mean, we're talking about something that's extremely dense and hard.
Yep. Yeah, I've tried to engrave Paduke. That stuff's like welding when you're trying to laser it, because it throws the beam everywhere. I mean, it's crazy.
We do Paduke, Bloodwood, Red Heart, all of that on a daily basis. It seems like Lignum Vitae doesn't do very well, but it's up there in the high Janka as well.
Vitae they use for bearings in turbines.
And it's also was used for boat anchors because it doesn't float.
Yep. That stuff is horrible.
And that's wood?
Yes.
Yep.
My uncle used to, and you have to keep it wet, because if not, when you do the bearings and stuff like that, it has to stay wet, or otherwise it will crack. It is fragile to that, but when it comes to hardness, they make bearings out of it for underwater applications.
Nice.
So like I said, it's been a fun experiment. We'll see what the 130 can do with it tomorrow.
Why not do a live video for us right now?
Because she's outside on the phone and I don't touch her lasers.
Chicken.
Hey, don't start.
Hey, I haven't got a pick on you in a while.
No,
Was
but
used to
it
being
may be
6 foot
something that
plus
we
tall.
video tomorrow and throw on the YouTube channel. So,
Nice.
see, I don't know. Whatever she wants to do. I've got a tabletop I've got to get finished. So,
Cool.
Tell me, what's your YouTube channel?
give me a minute. I think it's the Angry Craftsman.
Behind you. Before he said
All
something.
right. Looks like another thing in the chat said, nasty glue lately, cutting quarter-inch plywood is brutal. Y'all second that one. I bought some birch ply from Home Depot, which, I don't do a whole lot of cutting, y'all. But I had to make a baby sign for one of my wife's high school friends that finally had a kid. And man, it cut horribly. Same settings as what I've used before. Horrible. So I did have and this is, yeah. I had
completely
an
different
old
glue.
sheet. I had an old sheet that I had, just in the back that wasn't enough to complete one of these like 24-inch signs. I'm like, I want to cut this out. I threw that in there with the old settings and it cut like absolute butter, one pass, just perfect. I was like, these were the same SKUs, same barcode, same store, you know, absolutely. And it was probably what, a year old wood, so maybe it was a little drier, but man, it was absolute garbage, that new stuff.
No, just in a year they'll change the glues out. It's with the supply
Yeah.
and demand right now. Their supply chains are so screwed. Plus, too, those guys
Yeah.
are into just throwing stuff out, and so they're going to use whatever vendor they get for glue at the cheapest price. Because it's not like
Yeah.
product where it's made, I think, more under stringent standards because of its applications.
Yeah. Same place, Home Depot's had these, you've probably seen the 24-inch round tabletop things. You get them, they're like 15, $18. Nice rounded over edge. They changed the pliers on that and it went from like stain grade to you wouldn't even want to bring that in your house. Bunch of knots and a horrible edge. I think they recalled those and sent them back because everybody was like going through the stack, not even trying to buy them.
It's going to get worse before it gets better.
And I noticed a lot on the 1/4-inch too. Like I quit buying from Lowe's and Home Depot mainly because, like you're talking about, sometimes you'll have really good wood, and then other times it'll just kind of be eh. But a lot of them started to put in their core, changing their core to a softer wood, and a lot of that stuff will just like catch on fire because they use a bass or a balsa wood or something like that as a core to their 1/4-inch or 3 mil or whatever you want to call it, on the sheets. So I usually get mine from an actual lumber yard, and I've had really good results getting it from them. Been real consistent as far as the thicknesses and the material and how it cuts and engraves and all that. I'm not sure if Lowe's and Home Depot, if they just get it from the lowest bidder or what they do, but
Probably.
Exactly what they
I've
do.
noticed that too. Is just sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's just horrible, and it's who knows why. Suppliers,
I
It's
just don't
because
produce enough.
the industry's changed with Lowe's and Home Depot, where they used to cater more to, well, mainly Lowe's used to cater strictly to contractors. Now
yeah,
they don't care about
everybody.
contractors, and they're going to just general home user, and I guess the quality's not as high as demand as it used to be. Because
Yeah,
people look at price and not quality, and so those places have just degraded. Their lumber and everything is just, it's garbage anymore. Trying to build with it's almost impossible. If you're building a home, you don't
yeah,
go to them. You go to a lumber yard.
yeah.
So George's got another one. Oh no, that's Julia. She's got a question about
sorry.
the test cards. I was fixing to reply, but we'll text it here. When did you get the material test card? Do you know how long ago you downloaded that file? No. So it's probably known, but not very well known. Anything below 10 millimeters per second on those test cards used to not function, simply because anything below 10 would run the layer minimum power. In order to do a test card where we do the bunch of circles, you use shape properties to ramp, from 10 to 100% or whatever it was. And the min power for that layer has to be set to like 1 or 0.1 or something. It can't be 0, but you make it low. Well, at 10 millimeters per second below, it's running that min power in order to do this power scaling. So all that just didn't function right. So I went through and corrected. I want to say it was November of last year, maybe,
It was
to
around
where
the
it
end of
was,
last year.
yeah, a bunch of separate circles that will now function. So if you go back to the knowledge base, you'll see the updated version. I would run that test card. All right.
Yeah,
Yep. Sorry, I muted you. You were getting a bunch of background noise. I didn't know you were fixing to talk.
oh yeah, that's good. I was gonna say because I know there've been talk about the laser's not firing below 10%, but I don't know where that came from. But like,
Yeah, now that's a different topic. 10% threshold is tube dependent, but then the 10 millimeters per second was the min power for cornering. Yeah, it looks like he's got one of the Lightburn generated ones there on some sort of, is that EVA
Wine.
foam or something?
It's one of those wine koozies.
Yeah. Okay. But the min power for your DC tube is going to be, in that range, single digits, low teens, depending on the wattage, and that's basically how low can you run it, the turn down rate, to get stability from it. But no matter what that is, below 10 millimeters per second, it's trying to run the layer min power per light burns, um, layer setup.
no, you're
Already
talking
works
about the
confusing.
test file. You're talking about the test file, not the actual use, right?
This
Yeah, the
thing.
test file. Yep.
'Cause I was gonna say, 'cause in use, I mean, even on my Nova 24, I can run it down. I think, well, it depends on the speed too. Because if I'm going at 400 millimeters a second, anything below 10 ain't gonna show up. But if I
Yeah.
lower it, I've gotten it down to I think 5 or 6% even on my 60 watt. But I've had to slow down to like less than 100. So I mean, it's not practical, but in some cases it is. Like for let's say for instance those new JDS, the plastic cups, those things require probably about as little power as you can possibly put into them. And you want a higher speed, but you also want to be able to dial your power down. And in that case, like on those, I think I was at 8% at about 350 on my Nova 24 to be able to engrave those properly, I guess you could say, without causing any haze or burn to the plastic. So I mean, that's where I was confused because I thought, the way everybody talks about it is like the laser can't go below 10, but
No, you can. It's just when you get below, for a cutting speed for a vector, 10 millimeters per second is what it does. If you kind of hover your mouse over that min power setting on the layer setup, it'll tell you that's the cornering speed. So you can try to minimize corner blowout,
yep,
on
yep.
details.
And Grant, it looked like they shoved him in a new hole or something. They stuck him back by the water cooler. Damn, who did he tick off?
Hey, you got any good news to share, Grant?
Or did he get him his own office boot? It's got it next to the water cooler. Grant, you're muted.
This is my office, and I have my own water cooler.
Oh, okay.
For now, at least. I'm a little stingy with it.
Ah. They make you buy your
What's
own
that?
water.
No,
That fancy
no.
water.
What you mean good
That wa-
news?
that water needs to be
Personal
cold in
or
December.
work related?
Oh, so oh yeah, I'm having a baby, if that's what you're talking about.
And it's a miracle too because he's the first one to ever have one. It is finally
You're
Good
having a
report.
baby, or your wife?
My
You're
wife's
having a
having a
baby.
baby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, due date is in April, and we found out it's a boy. So yeah, I think that
Yay!
must be what you were talking about, Chris. I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
yeah.
I hadn't said nothing, so I was waiting for you to. When you was on here a couple weeks ago, I didn't want to say nothing. Your life is about ready to get turned upside down in 6 months.
Yeah, it's about to
I'll
get
tell you
crazy,
what,
but I'm excited.
it's fun. They're fun. Kids are fun.
No, it's fun up. It's
Till,
fun up until they hit
till they
teenager.
till they walk and start talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the next phase, and then you get to the teenager part, and then you just want to bash their
Hey,
head
one
against the
step at a time.
walls.
One step at a time.
Yeah. They're
And
fun.
at least
You'll enjoy it.
and at least it's a boy and not a girl, so you don't have to worry about the whole dating thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
Yeah.
don't get me started on that.
You don't have to worry about what she's bringing home.
All right.
What in the world?
Leave it to
That's the
me.
after hours topic, Jim.
Yeah. All right. So we got another topic. It says been scoring ornaments. Lots of ornaments. Is Christmas coming up? On O and E letters, I keep having delamination. Is increasing speed or lowering the power going to be more beneficial to stopping it? So what material are you engraving on or scoring on to get delamination?
And I think I might have an answer to that because I've experienced it.
It happens a lot on whiteboard and
Yep.
on
Okay.
polyply.
I knew you was going to say whiteboard because there's minimal glue there, and it all depends on your font size and what font you're using. Because basically, what you're doing is probably when you're cleaning it up, you're taking the center part of that O and wiping it right off the board. That's instead of your font size. You have to be really super careful, or you choose a different font, or
I'm using true single line font.
yeah, but
Okay.
sometimes it's the size of the font because what you're doing is you're getting such a small. Yeah, like probably you're getting it around where the home is at, or it's because of the size of that.
Probably the heat concentration.
Yeah, you're basically you're pulling the glue right off. Because
So making it a little bit larger, but then if I'm going to do an adjustment, is lowering my power or increasing my speed going to be more beneficial?
Well, speed is a speed limit. So your object is so small that increasing speed will probably not even do a thing, right?
Okay.
Think about like a mountain road versus interstate. If both of them had a speed limit of 150 miles per hour, you could reach that on the interstate pretty easily. On the mountain road, it's a lot tougher. And that's what your home lettering is. It's a mountain road, very tight curves and small shapes. So speed won't get you there. Power's probably the better opportunity. Another question would be, have you tried, I know scoring is typically faster, but have you tried doing a 2-line font and doing a fill layer engrave instead, just to get the quality?
It'll still do it on that right there on that whiteboard.
Really?
It's
Okay.
just because of the adhesion of that white on that MDF core. It gets too small and it becomes more brittle than anything. So the second you go to wipe it or bump it, it pops that white right off of there.
Okay.
I've played with it a couple different ways and it's the same result. It's literally the size because it won't just happen on those O's. If you're engraving, let's say a deer or something, and you've got small little spots in a deer for like its eyes or whatever, and you got to wipe it off, you'll pull the eyes right off. Its eyeballs.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it was the heat concentration during the score causing some of that glue to dry out. So at least with an engrave, you got those passes where you're given a little bit of time to dissipate heat. But
I think it's sometimes too.
You're 100% right that an engrave would be a better choice. But when it's the $5 ornament, that's the draw just to get people there. The score, it makes more financial sense. You know?
yeah, I got you.
And sometimes too, I think that whiteboard the glue is such a thin layer of glue, and there could be blind glue pockets in there that they don't have full adhesion because it's not meant to do what we're doing with it. So with them not having full glue adhesion underneath of there, it doesn't matter to them because it's meant to write on and wipe off in a solid state. We're using it for a purpose it's not meant to. And sometimes because I've had it like that home, I've had them stay solid. And then 60% of the time I'm wiping them off or taking them off, just playing with it. And I've come up basically the point of just increase the size to give that area a better chance of adhesion underneath of it. Because I don't know if it's a glue failure or a lack of glue on that underneath that whiteboard.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes I think we forget we're doing things with products that they were never meant to have them used for. Just like
Yeah,
whiteboard.
well,
I mean, and the manufacturer, what manufacturer of whiteboard would have ever thought the laser industry is going to pick us up and start beating us to death?
they probably wonder like, why do we sell so much whiteboard around Christmas? It can't be a Christmas present.
And
But
see, now she's having luck with her Kentucky and stuff. I'm surprised that E doesn't pop.
So that's what I was going to say. The only things on this ornament, again, because of speed and price, is where it says home, the actual zip code numbers, and then there's 2 little dots up there. That's the only thing that is engraved. Everything else is scored. I have had problems if I am wiping a little too hard or something, and if whatever I'm using is too damp and water gets underneath of that white layer into the hardboard layer, that I will have those bits pop off. But this one's perfect. All those tiny little bits, even with the swirly font that has, extra weird little things that could pop, none of this did. I scored it at my regular, I think I did this on the 80 watts at 100 speed, and 100 speed with, I guess this one
You did that on 130.
is shown. No,
Oh.
I think this one, it said I did it at 8 max for the power.
Like I
Usually
said,
I
sometimes
score at 10, but
I think sometimes it's a manufacturing process too, where you can have good luck on, like I said, so many of them. Then all of a sudden you have a bunch of failures, and I think it's literally the glue. It's the gluing process.
yes, it can be. Like you have one board of plywood that's fantastic, but the next board of plywood that was literally the next one in the stack is terrible. So this is the other whiteboard though that has the, it's just natural on the backside. It is not the black and white board. So that could be a difference too. I decided to just do these with this because this is a little bit cheaper. But I do stuff with the black and white as well.
Now, are you getting them
Black,
Depot
white.
or Lowe's?
Well, this one is the black white. I can't remember which one comes from which.
That's
The black, white,
that's Depot is black white.
I did a full sheet of these and didn't have a single failure. When I went to the one that had the natural color on the back, every single one of them failed. So it makes sense that it might be a glue issue,
Yeah.
So that material is actually trailer paneling. That's where you find it in 4x8 sheets, is with the crap paneling from the 80s that they still sell.
And they sell it like big 4x8 sheets?
I get it in 4x8 sheets. It's designed for like double wides and single wides.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And that's where you get it. It's not even 1/4 of an inch. I think looking at that, it's probably 4 mil.
Already.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can see the big sheets in the back. I get it in 4x8 sheets. So
Wow.
that's what that material is.
I don't generally use it. I just have a lot of problems with I don't like MDF for stuff really as well. I'd rather use ply, but it's so popular for the ornaments for Christmas.
Well, right now in this industry, we're sort of being
See,
forced
and
to
we
have to use what we can
solid
find.
wood.
Well, that's the other thing is that using the whiteboard when I'm not going to sacrifice my 3 mil for a single layer ornament that I would have had to paint white anyway. My 3 mil I save only for things that I have to assemble and they have to be that thickness. So yeah, whiteboard is definitely kind of a necessity thing right now for a lot of us.
I thought that said booted at first.
It's a little refrigerated magnet. So there's the magnet on the back.
I was like, I sort of read that and I was like, wow, that's a statement.
That's the whiteboard from Home Depot. The Home Depot near me is discontinuing it. So is the next nearest Home Depot.
Oh no.
Oh shit. Oh, I guess I'm going to town.
Yeah, I had to go buy some here this weekend. Anyways,
Yeah, I guess we are too.
but a lot of the Home Depots is store dependent and demand dependent on the managers on what they're sitting on inventory. And right now, both the stores are reducing stocks of stuff that's not profitable because the
Makes
managers
sense.
are looking at their P&Ls. Ours is our stores right now, they're running what they're calling fire crews, or what was the heck the word the guy used?
Skeleton crews?
No, it was beyond the scope of that. They didn't even call it skeleton. They called it something else. I went into our Lowe's. I just got a side by side and I was ordering a top, or I was in there for some other reason. Anyways, there was, I think, 8 employees or 9 employees in the entire store. And 4 of those employees was at customer service. And 2 of the other employees, I think, were down at commercial. So they had nobody in the rest of the entire store.
What time of the day was that?
Can't remember. Well, 2 different times I was there and noticed the same thing. One was in the morning before 10, and the other time was around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Right at the time that you would think that contractors and stuff would be coming in there and be a little bit more on the busier side, in the day, beginning of day stuff, and it was a ghost town. Employee-wise.
There's also 2 different types of Home Depot. There's a local store, and then they have I don't know if they call it a superstore or not, but it's a much larger Home Depot, physically square footage wise.
Yeah, that's how they used to measure the Lowe's, as the K stores.
The flagship stores or the K stores are the ones you want to try to go to if you want to get that whiteboard.
And Chris, you can pretty much kill a record.
Yay.